I never meant for the boat to replace my family. I just wanted to finish what my father started. We live in a tired stretch of northern Minnesota, where the forests are thick with pine and birch, and the lakes run deep and cold. My name's Wes Ryman. I'm just an ordinary guy, used to work mill jobs, then got into small engine repair, now do odd work for neighbors while I pour everything I have into this boat. Not just any boat. She's extreme, fortified hull, dual diesel engines, sonar, hydro radar, magnetic anomaly detector, and a reinforced dive chamber. People say it looks more like a science fiction prop than a vessel. But they don't know what I found deep in Ansel Lake last summer. What I saw. What I heard. They say I've lost my mind. Maybe I have. Or maybe I'm the only one paying attention. My wife, Eliza, doesn't understand. She used to. Back before she started calling it, your floating mistress. Before she started working longer hours at the pharmacy, coming home later dressing sharper. Before her smiles started going elsewhere. It's a Tuesday morning when the surveyor shows up. He drives a long white truck with government plates and a wraparound decal that reads U.S. Geological Survey. The word reservoir is stenciled on the side. The plan, according to rumors in town, is to build a dam 20 miles north and flood everything in its path. My boat might be the only thing that can get close to what lies under the water before it's gone forever. The surveyor's name is Grant. He's tall, with a blade-sharp jaw and those kind of eyes that don't blink often. He's from St. Paul, but he's no city softy. I watch him load gear out of his truck with ease. Tripods, scanners, some weird metallic probes I've never seen before. Eliza's standing out on the front porch as he parks. She's wearing her favorite summer dress, the one with the little white flowers. She hasn't worn it in over a year. I hear her laugh before I see her smile. That night, I come inside with oil under my nails and fiberglass cuts on my arms. Eliza's humming in the kitchen. She doesn't look at me. Who was that today? Ask. She sets a plate down hard enough to clink the ceramic. Just some government guy, surveying the area. They might build a dam. Yeah, I know. She shrugs and walks away. She doesn't say it, but I hear it. And you care more about your damn boat than this town or me. Later, I watch her from the bedroom window. She's outside on the porch, phone in hand, smiling at the screen. Her thumb moves in a rhythm I know too well. Back and forth. Typing. Waiting. Typing again. I go back into the basement, turn on the floodlights, and stare at my boat. The hull gleams under the glare. My fingers tremble. Not from anger, but from the pulse of something deeper. Something calling from the lake. The boat isn't finished. Not yet, but soon. The next day, I spot Eliza and Grant talking by the fence near the woods. I pretend to be tightening bolts on the dive chamber while I watch. She's laughing again. Too much laughing. She touches his arm. He leans in like he's sharing a secret. He catches me staring and tips his head in a slow, deliberate nod. Something in that nod tears through me like a splinter through skin. I stay up late that night, the boat's cabin light the only thing glowing for miles. I drink 2 beers and make lists in my notebook, gear checklists, depth estimates, the electromagnetic pulse I picked up last time near the trench on Ansel Lake. I can't stop thinking about that pulse. It wasn't natural. Neither is the light I sometimes see there now. Blue-green, throbbing, almost alive. It all started last summer. Fishing trip, just me and my dog Scout. We drifted too far, and my sonar picked up something. A shape, not geological. Something artificial or worse. I dived. Something moved down there. A shadow that shifted as I neared. I came up with blood in my ears and memories that still give me dreams that rattle my bones. So I built the boat. I called it the Delilah. Named it after my wife. Back then I still thought she'd be proud. On Friday, I find her perfume bottle in the glove box of her car. The one she always keeps in the bathroom. That night she says she's working late. I follow her. She doesn't go to the pharmacy. She drives out toward the woods, where the surveyor's truck is parked beside his government trailer. She doesn't knock. He opens the door for her. She goes inside. The lights go out. When she gets home, I'm sitting at the kitchen table, elbows on the wood, hands locked. She drops her purse and freezes. Our eyes meet, and in that second, everything we ever were collapses. She doesn't say sorry, doesn't deny it. Instead, she breathes deep and whispers. He listens to me. He's curious. He doesn't obsess. I want to yell, break something, but I don't. Instead, I nod and say, "You don't understand what's in that lake." She looks at me like I've grown gills. "There's nothing in that lake but weeds and water and whatever lie you keep telling yourself." I smile, just a little. "No," I say, "there's something else, and I'm going back." I didn't sleep after Eliza came home. She didn't climb into bed, just peeled off her shoes in the living room and curled up on the couch. I heard her crying once, softly, like she was trying not to wake me, but mostly, it was quiet, the kind of silence that tells you everything's broken and nobody's trying to fix it. At dawn, I walked out to the shed and opened the big doors. The Delilah waited inside, massive and still, half machine, half ghost. I ran my hand along the hull like I always did before starting work. She hummed, faintly. I swear it wasn't just vibration or power surge. She responded. There was something in her now. Something alive. Later that morning, I went into town for supplies, sealant, new pressure gauges, and a replacement diode for the sonar system. People barely talked to me anymore. Said I'd gone weird since last summer. Old Frank from the bait shop crossed the street to avoid me. Marla at the hardware store wouldn't meet my eyes. The only person who spoke to me was a little boy named Thomas. Maybe 7 or 8. He tugged on my jacket near the dock and whispered, "Mister, is it true the lake makes people sick?" I knelt to his level. "What did you hear?" "They said a deer came out of the woods with no eyes, and that the trees are bleeding black stuff now." His mom came running, yanked him back, and didn't say a word to me. When I got home, Eliza was gone. Her car missing. But something was left on the kitchen counter. A note. "We need time apart. I'll be at the motel near Grant's site. Don't follow me. Don't try to fix this. I'm not broken. You are." I read it 3 times. Each word felt like sand in my throat. But I didn't go after her. I went to the lake. The water was still, unnaturally still. No birds, no insects. Even the frogs had stopped their croaking. I loaded the Delilah with the new equipment, calibrated the instruments, and slid her into the shallows using the ramp I'd built over the past year. I fired the engines. They purred, deep and mechanical, like a heartbeat through metal. As I drifted from the shore, I passed a stretch of pine where the trees looked wrong. Leaves shriveled, bark dry and gray, and something else. Fine threads stretching between branches, glowing faintly like veins under skin. The sonar kicked in as we neared the deeper trench. I'd named the spot sector null in my logs. At 50 feet down, the water temp dropped 10 degrees. At 80, the screen picked up anomalies, shapes that flickered like movement, then vanished. I deployed the magnetic anomaly detector. That's when the pulse hit. Same as last year, just stronger. Like something massive shifting below. My ears rang. My nose bled. The water around the boat darkened. Not black, not red. Something in between. Oily and shimmering. I tried to surface, but the engine stalled for a second. Like something had gripped the Delilah from beneath and didn't want her to leave. Then everything stopped. Stillness. When I returned to shore, dusk had fallen. I was lightheaded. There were new cuts on my forearms, though I hadn't hit anything. My clothes smelled of rust and something sweeter, almost like lilac. But wrong. I drove to town, parked outside the motel by Grant's trailer. Eliza's car was there. First, I just sat in my truck. But then I saw them, silhouettes through the window. Her body pressed against his. Her hands in his hair. His mouth on her neck. Her dress hiked up. Her leg around him. She wasn't just cheating. She wanted him. Something inside me cracked. I went home, walked straight to the boat, and opened the dive chamber hatch. I crawled inside and locked it behind me. I turned off every light, laid on the padded floor, and stared at the small glass window above me. The lake was in my head. I felt it pulsing, calling. The next morning, Eliza came back. She didn't knock, just stormed into the shed where I was working. "You followed me," she snapped. "No, I saw your car." She didn't deny anything, just crossed her arms and stood in front of the Delilah, mouth curled like she wanted to spit on the hull. "You're obsessed. You've been obsessed ever since that stupid trip. You spend every day down here whispering to yourself, talking about lights and shapes like a lunatic." "I saw something, Eliza." "You saw nothing. You lost your mind. You let a dream ruin this family." I looked up at her. "What about you? What ruined you?" That shut her up. She turned to leave, but stopped in the doorway. "Grant's not like you," she said softly. "He listens. He touches me like he means it. He wants me, Wes. When's the last time you did?" I said nothing, because the answer hurt too much. She walked out. That night I ran a test. I dropped a probe, homemade but precise, into sector null and left it overnight. In the morning I pulled up the footage. At 3:13 a.m. the camera went dark, then slowly lit up in a sick, pulsing glow. A shadow swam past the lens. Not a fish, not a man, something in between. At 3:19 the audio picked up something strange. A voice, not in words, but a rhythm, like an underwater chant. Not human, but almost familiar. I rewound it over and over. That's when I saw it. In the reflection on the lens, barely visible. A face, Eliza's, smiling. I didn't sleep after seeing Eliza's face on that lens. I tried to convince myself it was a reflection, a trick of the light, but I'd paused the frame, examined every pixel. Her eyes weren't just visible, they were glowing. Faint, greenish blue, same as the lake pulses. And the smile, it wasn't the one I used to know. It was wider, almost too wide, like something had worn her face like a mask. That morning, I took the recording to the sheriff's office. Figured I'd show someone. Get a second opinion. Prove I wasn't imagining all this. But the moment I stepped into the building, I knew I'd made a mistake. Sheriff Dan Lott looked up from his desk and sighed like I'd ruined his whole day. Wes, he grumbled. Don't tell me it's about the lake again. It is, I said. But it's not what you think. I showed him the video. He watched 5 seconds before waving it away. You ever think maybe what you need is a little time away? You and Eliza could go somewhere warm. Fix things. Look man. People say you've been different since that fishing trip. Different? I snapped. Because I saw something nobody else can explain? Because I didn't look away? Dan leaned back, folded his hands over his belly. Because you stopped living and started chasing shadows, Wes. He wouldn't even print a report. I walked out. That night I dreamed of the lake. Only this time it wasn't the surface I saw, it was beneath. Miles down. Caverns made of shifting stone and bone. A light pulsing from the cracks. Something old curled in the dark, vast and waiting. I woke drenched in sweat, my chest tight like I was still underwater. The next morning I called Eliza. She didn't answer, so I drove out toward the reservoir site. Grant's trailer sat at the edge of a wooded ravine, not far from where the flooding would begin once construction started. He had solar panels on the roof, gear cases stacked around the back, and a long black pipe sunk into the ground, some sort of sensor post, maybe geothermal. I didn't knock. I walked right in. He was in the kitchen shirtless, standing way too comfortably in front of my wife, holding a coffee mug like he'd lived there all his life. Eliza stood barefoot, hair up, wearing a t-shirt that wasn't hers. They didn't look surprised to see me. You've gone too far, Eliza said quietly, like she was the victim here. You can't just walk in like this. I ignored her and turned to Grant. You survey anything strange out by Sector Null? I asked. You ever see the light? Grant didn't flinch, but he didn't smile either. There's some seismic distortion in that trench, he said. Unusual readings, electromagnetic surges, but I figured it was natural gas. No, I said. It's not. He shrugged. You should probably stay away from it. That's when I knew he'd seen it too. I left without saying goodbye. I didn't want to see her touch him again. I didn't want to hear her call after me with that same false concern she used when I first told her about the shadow in the lake. But as I walked out, she said something that stopped me cold. You've always needed something to save, Wes. Project. Purpose. You never chose me. I didn't turn around. You never gave me the chance. That evening I took the Delilah out again, alone. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I went deeper than before, into the trench. This time I dove. The pressure was worse than before, like something heavy pressed against my ribs. My eardrums ached. My flashlight flickered. Then I saw it. Not a shape, a door. Buried into the rock face, half covered in silt. It wasn't human-made, but it wasn't natural either. It was etched, with grooves and spirals and unfamiliar symbols that pulsed when I got close. I reached out, foolishly, stupidly, and touched the edge. The lake shivered. Suddenly I was back in the dive chamber, coughing water. I don't remember surfacing. I don't remember getting out of the suit. But I remember the voice. It was in my head. She belongs to us now. When I got home, Eliza was waiting. In the dark. On the porch. She wasn't alone. Grant stood beside her, arm draped around her shoulders like he owned her. His eyes weren't right. Too black. No light in them. No reflection. Eliza stepped forward. You need to stop going to the lake, she said. You're stirring something. I'm going back tomorrow, I said. And I'm going to open it. Her face twitched. Like her smile faltered. Like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. Then she walked to me and kissed me on the cheek. Cold. Distant. You always had to know what was under the surface, she whispered. Then they turned and walked into the woods together. That night, I heard voices outside the shed, chanting, low and guttural like something dragging language up from the bottom of the lake. I opened the door. No one was there, but footprints led from the woods to the water. Bare feet. Eliza's. I didn't leave the shed until morning. I spent the night sitting in the Delilah's cockpit, shotgun across my knees, listening. The chanting never came back, but the silence felt worse. It had weight to it, like the world was holding its breath. At dawn I followed the footprints. They led down past the creek over the mossy slope and into the shallows of Ansel Lake. I stood at the water's edge for a long time. The prints ended in a swirl of broken reeds, as if she'd simply stepped into the water and never came out. But I knew better. She was still out there, just not fully Eliza anymore. I spent the next day reviewing my old dive logs, the ones from the trip last summer. I hadn't opened them in months. Some of the files were corrupted, others skipped or froze. But the audio clips, they played just fine. One stuck with me. A low hum, a heartbeat rhythm, a voice beneath the pulse. Garbled, wet, not in English, but I could feel the meaning. The door remembers. I stared at those words scrawled in my notes. I didn't remember writing them. And right below that, we were warned. We weren't meant to reach this depth. That's when it came back. Something I'd forgotten. The other diver. His name was Trevor. My cousin. That fishing trip? It wasn't just me and Scout. Trevor was there. But nobody remembers him now. Not my aunt. Not even his mother. It's like he never existed. I remember diving together. I remember seeing something move in the dark. I remember him screaming into the comms. I remember his regulator tearing free from his mouth. I remember his hand reaching for mine as something pulled him down. Then nothing. He was gone. And the lake gave me back. I knew then, it wasn't done with me. I got to work. Rewiring the sonar. Reinforcing the dive chamber. Installing the final piece, an acoustic signal scrambler, built from old military tech I bought off a Navy surplus site. It could scramble the frequencies of the pulses. Maybe even disrupt them. Or maybe just make the thing angry. Either way, it was time. That night, just before I launched the Delilah again, someone came to the house. It wasn't Eliza. It was Marla. From the hardware store. She looked wrong. Her pupils were blown wide, her skin waxy. She spoke in that same rhythm I'd heard on the lake audio. "Let it rest," she hissed. "You were not chosen." I slammed the door in her face. She stood on the porch for an hour before wandering back into the woods. The lake had touched others now. When I reached Sector Null the next morning, the light beneath the surface had changed. It no longer pulsed. It spun. A spiral, blue and green, revolving like a whirlpool that never broke the surface. I dove. I passed through cold that felt like knives. My vision blurred. But I kept going. And there it was. The door. Fully exposed now. The sediment had cleared, as if the lake had peeled back the earth on purpose. Symbols glowed faintly, forming a ring around its edge. A shape floated before it, hunched and human-sized. Not moving. I drifted closer. It was Trevor. His suit shredded, his face half exposed to the water, lips blue, but eyes open. Still watching. When I reached for him, his body jerked, and he opened his mouth, not to scream, but to breathe. The lake was breathing through him, and from the doorway behind him, something moved. I surged upward, blood pounding, lungs on fire. My vision blurred. The last thing I saw before blacking out was the spiral light splitting into 3 separate beams, each heading toward shore. I woke in the cabin of the Delilah. The engine was off. The sonar was still running. The screen showed movement, 3 heat signatures. They were walking across the bottom of the lake, toward the town. I rushed back to shore, heart in my throat, thinking of Eliza. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still believed I could bring her back. That maybe whatever she was becoming could be undone. When I reached the house, the front door was open. The lights were on, and Eliza was waiting at the table, hair wet, eyes distant, hands folded in front of her like a girl waiting for a priest. "You saw it," she said. "Didn't you?" I nodded. She stood slowly, walked to me, touched my cheek. "I tried to fight it," she whispered. "But it's in us now. The water, the memory, the voice that came before us all." She leaned close. Her breath smelled like algae and copper. "You still have time, but not much." Then she stepped back and began to hum. That same chant. And her shadow twisted on the wall behind her, elongated. No longer shaped like a woman. I fled. I didn't look back. Back to the Delilah. Back to the only place that made sense anymore. And as I sat in the cockpit, reviewing the sonar data, I noticed something new. The pulses? They weren't random. They were a message. They spelled my name. The strange what you get used to. The lake pulses. The trees bleed. My wife hums to the dark. And I sit in the Delilah reading messages written in sonar ripples like it's just another day in the Northwoods. But the scariest part? The starting to make sense. After Eliza whispered my name with that thing behind her eyes, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I spent the whole night on the boat, staring at the sonar logs, feeding them through the scrambler. And finally, something broke through. It wasn't just a name, it was a sentence looped and repeated, buried in waveforms like Morse code across dimensions. "Wes Ryman, open the door. You remember." Remember what? By sunrise, I noticed more than the water was changing. Fog rolled in off the lake, thick and yellowish, seeping into the town like a stain. I drove into Arlo's General for fuel and saw the clerk, Jonah, standing stock-still behind the counter, mouth slightly open. He didn't speak, didn't blink, just stared. His lips were moving, barely. The same chant. "Wes?" A voice croaked from behind me. I turned. There was old Pete, the mechanic. He looked 20 years older than he did last month. "You opened it," he said. "Even if you didn't mean to, it remembers you." "What does?" Pete smiled. "A horrible, gnarled thing that stretched too wide. The one they buried. The one beneath the trench." Then he started bleeding from the eyes. I ran. Back at the lake, The Delilah rocked in her moorings like she was alive. I climbed aboard and turned everything on. The sonar screamed. Literally screamed. Not a beep. Not a tone. A woman's scream, echoing from the lake floor. Then cut off. Then silence. I needed answers. Not dreams. Not chance. Truth. So I went to the county archives. I didn't expect to find anything. But buried in a dusty ledger from 1910 was an old U.S. Army Corps report. A single-page entry titled, Unusual Magnetic Field and Subterranean Cavity Ansel Lake Basin. Recommend site sealed and restricted. Marked unfit for reservoir development. There was a second note in pencil, scribbled along the margin. Local diver R. Tremblay vanished during trench survey. No remains recovered. Warned against further exploration. Said the water called him by name. Tremblay. I'd heard the name once. Whispered by Trevor, before the lake took him. Said something like, Tremblay warned us. I flipped further. Same report. A few pages later, quietly amended. Site cleared for future dam construction. Concerns dismissed. Of course, they ignored it. That afternoon I saw Grant. He was walking alone along the shoreline, notebook in hand, his boots soaked with black water. I followed him. I had to. I caught up with him in the clearing near the old Ranger Tower. Abandoned now, leaning sideways like a dying tooth. He turned before I spoke, almost like he knew I was coming. You saw it, he said. Didn't you? I saw something. I don't know what it is. It's not a what, he said. It's a who. And it remembers us. Not just this generation. Everyone that's come before. It waits between worlds. You knew. He nodded. We all do. Everyone they send up here. We pretend it's about mapping or seismic data. But really, we're just here to see if the thing stirs. So why stay? I asked. His eyes darkened. Because some of us don't want to stop it. That night I went home. Eliza was in the bathtub. Naked. Eyes closed. Humming softly. The water had a green sheen to it. Like algae was growing inside the porcelain. I didn't speak. Couldn't. I just watched her float there. Her skin too pale, her lips too blue. But peaceful. As if she wasn't even human anymore. Just waiting for the tide to change. On the wall above her, something was scratched into the tiles. When the reservoir comes, the flood will rise. And with it, the first voice. I left just before dawn. Didn't pack food. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't check if Eliza was still breathing in that milky green bath. I had no need for long goodbyes or last looks. This wasn't a fishing trip. This was descent. The lake was as still as I'd ever seen it. Not a ripple, not a bird call. Not even the insects buzzing. Just waiting. I slid the Delilah into the deep again. Not to test. Not to scout. This time, I was going through the door. I reached sector null within an hour. The sonar showed no fish, no driftwood. Just the trench. The spiral. The darkness pulsing like a second heart inside the earth. I suited up. This time, I didn't hesitate. I lowered myself into the dive chamber, sealed the hatch, and dropped into the abyss. There's a point about 400 feet down where the water stops feeling like water. It gets heavier, slower, not just pressure, something else. A density of meaning, like I wasn't just swimming through a lake, but through time, memory, something primal. And then I saw the door. It was wide open. The first time I found it, it had been partially buried, symbols dim and silent. Now they glowed like veins on a dying god. And in the threshold stood Trevor, his skin pale, swollen, but he was standing, watching. Behind him, the passage led into an impossible space. Too deep, too wide, walls made of what looked like bone or shell, pulsing like a lung. He raised a hand, and I followed. Inside was not underwater. It was dry. I was standing, no suit, no mask. The walls breathed and shimmered. I couldn't tell if it was flesh or stone or something older. Voices filled the corridor. Whispers from every direction. Some in languages I didn't know, others that spoke in my father's voice. My mother's, even my own, echoing back at me. You brought the door with you. At the end of the corridor was a chamber. A great open circle with a pit in the center, bottomless and filled with stars. Eliza was there, but not as I remembered her. She was wearing that summer dress again. Her hair floated around her like she was underwater, though the air was still. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her feet were bare, and she was humming. Why me? I asked. She turned, smiled. Because you remembered. Remembered what? That this isn't your first descent. I don't know how to explain what happened next. She reached for my hand, and the moment our skin touched, I remembered everything. Another life, another age. We weren't husband and wife then. We were sentinels, keepers, watchers on the shore of a black sea. Our task had been to seal the door forever, to keep the first voice from rising. But I betrayed it. I opened it once before, and the thing behind the voice marked me. It left something inside my bloodline. A seed. A call. A magnetic draw that would echo down the years until it reached me again. Wes Ryman, the last of my line. And Eliza? She had remembered too. That's why she drifted. Why she let the voice in. Not because she loved Grant. Because she belonged to the lake now. We all did. I stepped closer to the pit. The stars in it began to blink. Not randomly, but in rhythm. A code. My name. My name again. And then, open. I fell to my knees. The weight of it. Memories, centuries, cycles of drowning and rebirth. It crushed me. And yet I smiled. Because I understood something no one else had. The boat wasn't an obsession. It was a vessel. A key. A shape the lake had shown me in dreams. Disguised as plans, sonar charts, deep water logic. But it wasn't meant to carry me. It was meant to carry it. That's when the hum changed pitch. The water above us, miles above us, shuddered. The first voice was rising. And the Delilah was its chariot. Eliza stood at the pit's edge and opened her arms. From the stars below came a hand, not quite a hand. Long, jointless, tendrils made of memory and sound. She stepped forward and vanished into the light. I don't remember climbing back up or returning to the boat. Only the image of her disappearing. Her hum echoing through the pit even as it closed again behind her. I woke in the cockpit, soaked, shivering, but alive. And the Delilah was changed. Her hull shimmered. Her systems flickered in alien colors. The dive chamber pulsed. She wasn't mine anymore. I docked at shore and walked home. Smoke rose in the distance, Arlo's General burning. People stood in the street, faces slack, whispering. The sky was gray, even though no clouds had passed. And I knew what came next. Not flooding, not water, something deeper. The reservoir wasn't a plan. It was a summons. By the time I got back to town, the sun was gone. But not because it had set. It had simply vanished. The sky above wasn't night or day, just a dim, endless gray, like an old bedsheet stretched tight over the world. No moon, no stars, just absence. I stood at the edge of Main Street and watched the people move. They weren't running or screaming or fighting the way I once imagined the end might come. They were calm, dead calm. Jonah, the gas station clerk, walked in a straight line down the center of the street, eyes fixed ahead, whispering the chant in a slow, even loop. 2 kids trailed behind him, sisters, maybe 9 or 10. Their mouths moved, but no sound came. Marla stood in the broken window of Arlo's General, fire licking up behind her. She didn't move, just watched the flames eat the town. A smile stretched too wide for her face. No one seemed to see the fire. No one tried to stop it. I passed Sheriff Dan's truck. Empty, lights on, door wide open. His hat sat on the ground, wet with what looked like black oil. Or blood, maybe both. I didn't go looking for him. I think part of me already knew. I stopped outside the pharmacy where Eliza used to work. The windows were shattered. Rows of pills poured out like sugar across the sidewalk. The metal sign with the red cross had melted. The paint dripping upward as though gravity had lost interest in the rules. Inside, on the far wall, someone had written in long black slashes, "The voice is here. It speaks through US. Comes through the skin." I made it home before midnight. The Delilah was still docked out back, glowing faintly under the tarp like a covered lantern. She didn't hum anymore. Not to me. She was listening now. And the lake was answering. I found the last journal my father ever wrote, tucked into a box beneath the floorboards. He'd spent years scribbling diagrams, maps, numbers, mostly unreadable. But one page stood out. Saw the shape again in the sonar. Same pattern as 74. Same dreams. Same whisper. Starting to think it isn't the lake that's changing. It's me. Maybe it always was. And then, a line underlined twice. If it ever tries to rise, burn the boat. I shut the book. Too late, Dad. That night, I dreamed in colors I don't have words for. In the dream, I was under the lake, but the water was gone. I stood at the edge of a pit the size of a county. In it, thousands of people floated in slow orbit, limbs curled, faces calm. And Eliza floated at the center. She was glowing, no longer human. She turned and looked at me and said, "We are memory now. The reservoir holds what the world was too afraid to remember." Then her face melted into mine. I woke up to the sound of static. Not from a TV or the radio. From inside the house. The static buzzed through the vents, through the pipes, through my teeth. Then it spoke. "Wes Ryman, we thank you for the vessel. The door opens once more. You may return to the water." I should have run. Instead, I opened the door. Grant was standing in my yard. Only it wasn't Grant anymore. His skin had split along the chest, revealing something shimmering inside, like a jellyfish wrapped in bone and metal. His eyes were gone. In their place were black spirals, spinning slowly. "Time to go," he rasped. "It's almost ready." He didn't wait for me to agree. He turned and walked toward the Delilah, and I followed. The boat systems turned on the moment we boarded. Lights blinked. Consoles lit up. The engines didn't need fuel anymore. They responded to intention. Grant, or what wore his skin, went below deck. I stayed topside and stared out at the lake. The spiral light in the water had grown. Now it spun in full view, a portal where the trench used to be. A vortex of memory, color, sound, and time. The reservoir wasn't being built. It was being unleashed. I watched the water start to rise. Not from rain or runoff. From beneath. The lake was swelling. Spilling into the forest. Into the streets. Into homes. It was claiming what had always belonged to it. And the people, they welcomed it. I saw Marla walking into the shallows with arms raised. The children followed. The gas clerk. The pastor. Even Sheriff Dan, soaked and bleeding, stumbled into the current with a smile carved into his jaw. One by one, the town walked into the water. They weren't drowning. They were remembering. And I stood at the helm of the vessel I'd spent years building. Now nothing more than a key to a door I should never have touched. And I whispered back to the lake. I remember now. Then I turned on the engines. And the Delilah moved, not through water, but through the fold beneath it, toward the final crossing. The Delilah drifted silently through the spiral. There was no splash, no resistance, no sensation of movement at all. The lake simply vanished and the world became other. The air thickened, though there was no wind. The sky disappeared, and in its place, a deep violet void stretched in every direction. Around us were the bones of dead civilizations, columns of black stone, fractured archways, stairwells that led nowhere. They hung in the air like the dreams of something ancient that had forgotten how to wake up. And ahead of me the spiral continued. Not made of light now, but of memory. Each rotation pulsed with a sound. A voice, a flash. My father shouting over waves, Eliza laughing before she ever stopped loving me. My mother calling me inside from the cold. Then Trevor screaming. Then silence. Then my own voice, whispering secrets to myself in a language I'd never learned. I gripped the helm tighter and whispered, "Keep her steady." The Delilah responded. Below the vessel, the void wasn't empty. It breathed. Massive, slow, thunderous. I looked down and saw forms, humanoid, almost drifting in the dark like kelp. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Suspended in space like thoughts the lake had refused to forget. Their mouths moved in unison. The chant again. But this time I understood it. He brings the key. The key knows the door. The door is not a lock but a mouth. I descended. Not by steering. Not by will. The Delilah simply responded to the call. A shape rose from the dark. A structure. Circular. Bigger than a city. A ring of living stone. Spiraling in endless loops. Carved with the same symbols I'd seen in the trench. And at its center, the core. It was not a temple. Not a machine. It was a mind. Coiled. Sleeping. Older than humanity. Older than Earth. Not alive in the way we understand it, but aware. And the boat, my boat, pulsed in time with it. That's when she appeared. Eliza, floating beside the Delilah, wearing nothing but the spiral etched into her skin like a tattoo that shimmered when she moved. Her eyes were pale blue, too pale, as if they'd forgotten how to reflect light. She stepped onto the deck without climbing, without effort. Just was. "I told you not to follow me," she said softly, brushing hair behind her ear. "But I'm glad you did." "You're not her," I whispered. "No," she said. "But I remember her. She's still inside. In pieces. Like coral growing around bone." I backed away. She didn't follow. "You think you're here to stop this," she continued. "But Wes, you were made for this. Your father knew. Your blood knew. You brought the shape into the world the first time. That's why the lake called you back." I shook my head. "I was trying to build something that could survive the depths." "No," she said. "You were building the body." Suddenly the Delilah shook. Panels flipped open. Lights ignited down her spine. Something inside the hull began to shift. Unfolding. Like joints cracking open after a long hibernation. Metal groaned like a voice clearing its throat. And the spiral opened beneath us. I screamed as we were pulled down deeper into the core. Not water. Not space. Just memory. Dragging me inward like I was being swallowed by everything I'd forgotten. And then silence. I stood in a field of reeds. Ansel Lake shimmered behind me like a mirror. The sky was blue again. I was 16. I turned. My father was sitting on the dock. Legs swinging off the edge. Smiling. But his eyes were weeping blood. "You built it, son," he said. "You finished what I couldn't. Now it remembers." "What does?" He pointed behind me. I turned. And saw myself older. Present me. Standing on the deck of the Delilah. Deep underwater. Hands on the helm. Eyes blank. The core had pulled me inward not just through space, but through time. Through selves. I saw my first dream of the boat when I was 11. Saw the first time I sketched the sonar array in a school notebook. Saw the day Eliza kissed me by the docks and whispered, "Promise me you'll never go where I can't follow." And then I saw her walking into the lake with Grant, whispering, "He needs to open it. We're just the invitation." I came back gasping, drenched in freezing sweat, lying on the deck as the Delilah surfaced. But not into the lake. We rose into a reflection of our world. Familiar, but wrong. The sky overhead was a black eye watching. The trees bent away from the shoreline, as if afraid. The town of St. Hollow stood ahead, but every building was upside down, roots instead of foundations, hanging in the air like lanterns. The people moved in perfect rhythm, not walking, gliding, chanting, all wearing my face. Eliza turned to me. "We're in the between," she said, "where the first voice keeps all its dreams." "And what does it want?" I asked. She smiled. "You." Eliza led me through the inverted town of St. Hollow, where roads curled into the sky and shadows dripped like oil from porch swings. Every face stared as I passed. My face, but older, younger, broken, rotted versions of me that had lived and died 1,000 different ways. "We're not inside a place," I said aloud, eyes wide. "We're inside a thought." She turned to me, that same calm, alien grace. "A memory," she whispered. "The first voice's last one." We reached the chapel, or something shaped like one. It rose out of the ground like a rib cage turned upside down. The bell in the tower was a pulsing orb of light, ringing with no sound, just tremors in the bones of your skull. Inside, something waited. I stepped forward, and the world folded around me. I found myself back in the cockpit of the Delilah, alone. Only this wasn't the boat. It was a replica. The spiral spun outside the windows, and a voice filled the air. Not with words, but with sensation. Each syllable was a memory. The time I first learned to swim. My father's last breath. Eliza's laugh the day I proposed. Her scream the night she left. Trevor's hand, slipping from mine in the dark. All compressed into a single command. "Finish what you began." Panel opened on the console. Inside, a single switch. I knew, without question, that flipping it would release the Delilah's core. Not a reactor. Not a motor. A seed. The thing I thought I built to survive the deep. It wasn't a submersible. It was a womb. "Stop," I said. "I don't want this. I never wanted this." But the voice only returned. "You were never meant to want, only to remember, and to bring us forward." My hand reached for the switch, shaking, rebelling, and for a second, I hesitated. And then, Wes. It was Eliza's voice. Human. Not distant. Not possessed. "Don't do it," she said. I turned. She was standing beside the helm. No longer glowing. No longer humming. Tears in her eyes. "I remembered too," she whispered. "All of it. We weren't just watchers in another life. We were the ones who locked it away. We weren't cursed. We chose to forget, to stop this thing from breaking into the world." She reached out her hand. "You can stop it, Wes. Not by opening the door, but by closing it again." I froze. The switch buzzed under my fingertips. The spiral throbbed outside the window like a heartbeat trying to escape a rib cage. Then I saw them, floating around the spiral like satellites. The people from the lake. Trevor. My father. Sheriff Dan. Marla. The children. And every one of them smiled. Not in welcome. In relief. Because they'd been caught in the memory. And someone was finally remembering how to end it. I pulled my hand back. Eliza nodded. We turned together, facing the spiral. And we spoke. Not words, but the memory of the ceiling chant. The one we'd spoken in that other life. That life before the lake. Close the gate. Bind the mouth. Let the voice sleep. Over and over, louder. As the spiral screamed and twisted. The boat groaned. The replica cracked. The spiral folded in on itself, turning from light into color, from color into shadow, from shadow into nothing. The water collapsed. The world fell. And then, I opened my eyes in the shed. The Delilah was there, unfinished, just as I'd left it 2 years ago. Dust thick on her frame. Tools scattered. The cabin untouched. No spiral. No pulse. I staggered outside. The lake shimmered in the distance. Flat. Silent. Smoke rose from the chimney. I smelled bacon. Inside the house, Eliza was at the stove, humming. She turned and smiled. "You slept like the dead," she said, handing me coffee. "You still working on that boat?" I stared. She was whole. Alive. No humming in the walls. No spiral in her eyes. "What day is it?" I asked. She frowned. "Sunday, July 10th. The day the surveyor was supposed to arrive." That night, I sat on the porch and looked out at the lake. No ripples. No voice. Just a quiet, living thing. And in the distance, near the trench, I saw something floating. A small object. I took the skiff and rowed out. It was a single silver switch, floating upright like a buoy. I didn't touch it, just stared. And as I turned to row home, I heard a whisper ripple across the surface. You remembered. This time,